Over the last 10 years, the number of people that tune in every month has doubled. There are now around 67 million listeners in America, with that number being close to the 100 million worldwide. To tap into this market and create a successful podcast, you need to think about who you're talking to. What do they care about? What will make them pay attention? Chances are, you already have an idea in mind for your podcasts, but it's worth expanding or even revising your podcast to come up with something fresh. Why create a podcast? Before you do anything, ask yourself, why do I want to create a podcast? Are you making one for your business? Then podcasts are a great way to build authority and provide valuable content to your audience. It also creates a way for you to provide value to potential clients or collaborators by inviting them to the show. Who is your podcast for? Podcasts can be as general or specific as you want, but knowing who you're talking to helps tailor content and keeps listeners engaged. For example, if you're a gym trainer who wants to make a workout podcast, then your target audience will be interested in getting fit, exercising, or even bodybuilding. Knowing who you're talking to gives you an idea of the type of content you can focus on. In a way, a persona keeps your show focused to make more engaging content. Now to learn how to create your first podcast, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony from Trav Media Group.
Thanks for throwing it over, Alfred. What's up, guys? This is Anthony Travagliante, founder of Trav Media Group and the host of the Content Marketing Podcast. Here to show you how I put together the podcast. So what we're looking at right now is episode 4 of the Content Marketing Podcast with Ashley Newton. This will be coming out a little after the video, so if you're checking this out, you're going to get a little preview of how that was designed. But here we are in Adobe Audition. I use Adobe Audition because it works well. It also works well with all the other Premiere softwares, Adobe softwares like Premiere and After Effects. So oftentimes when I'm doing a video element, I can go straight from Premiere to Adobe and vice versa. So we're not using video in this. However, one day we might, but we're still in here editing just because it works well. So let's just show you how the beginning works. This is my intro that you are used to hearing if you hear the show.
Greetings, and welcome to the
So I already have that pre-canned, I have that pre-edited, and it always starts about here on the tape. As you can see here, I have fade out audio, so I can run under the track, which is this track 3, which is my pre-canned intro track. If you listen to the podcast, I always do a little bit of introduction, which is something I do after the podcast is recorded. But I just recorded this before the video, so what we do from here is we're going to go clean it up. So the cool thing I like about Audition too, and I'm sure Pro Tools and a few other softwares work this way, but I know like GarageBand doesn't, and editing in other softwares doesn't. But when you click on the track, now you're in the waveform. So this is the entire audio clip. Now we'll go back to the multi-track over here. Now I didn't edit much out of this, but there was like a big breath I took that I kind of just thought felt unnatural. So I cut it out, so now you'll see that that's missing. But if we were to go back to the waveform, it's gonna be there. So if you're already been dicing up your stuff and you didn't do this yet, you can still make these audio changes to all the files without being a hassle. So what are some of the things we do in here? First and foremost, I definitely recommend doing more homework on audio, cleaning up and fixing. What I'm about to do is really clean, lean, and mean, but it's also what I know works for me. There's a lot of different situations, including background noises and things of that nature, that make doing this a little more challenging. So definitely make sure you know where you should be doing and the sound you're trying to go for. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by just actually not highlighting the whole thing, but we're going to go in and get a little noise sample. You guys could barely hear that. But what we're going to use it for is noise reduction. There is a hotkey to do this, which is Shift-P to capture the noise, Control-Shift-P to actually reduce the noise process, but we're just going to do it like this so I could show you guys. Then you're going to highlight the whole thing, which you click Control-A, Control-Shift-P, and now the noise capture is here. You could also capture noise again right here if you want, but you kind of want to do this before. So now you're just going to kind of play around. Last week with our little week break, but we are back to provide more value for you guys. And this week, my guest is Ashley Newton. this was a really fun episode for me because I've known. So I'm going to keep it like that. As you can see, if you were watching earlier in the video, if you noticed earlier in the video, you can see now this is really flat. When I highlighted it before, it had a little bit to it. So you're just pulling out kind of the hum in the background. You want to be very delicate with it. Sometimes, especially if you're using a way better microphone than I am, you're going to hear it. It's going to get tinny and crunchy when you're trying to pull too much out. So you really want to balance that. But something you can do, let's say, you couldn't do anything but record your podcast intro with a fan in the background. You know, you can pull a lot of that out and then kind of bring a little more volume back into your voice through EQing, but that's not something we're going to go into here because we don't have to. So now I have got the whole thing. We're going to highlight this and bring all our back up just so we can see it. This is the whole wave clip. So then next we're going to do pretty basic stuff. We're going to compress it. I just use the voice leveler for this, but this is also something you can really get into the weeds of, especially as the quality of your podcast goes up. And it's not that I don't strive for the best quality, but I'm a one-man band right now. No pun intended with the single band compressor, but I am doing this podcast on my own. I'm also running a company, so it's the point's to get the value out. So this usually does the job very well. And as you'll see, it kind of crunches everything down and it flattens it that way, and then as you'll notice now, the audio is going to be quieter. Obviously, it was all the way up to -3, sometimes even pushing 0. So how do we fix that? We go into amplitude and compressor. We hit normalizer, and we're going to go for -2 dB. And boom, it pulls it all up to -2. -3 is also a usual go-to for this. However, -2 gives you that little bit extra volume. So now you'll hear good to get to catch up with Ashley and see all the great things she has been accomplishing. So if you are in the travel world, nice. So we're crunchy. We're not blasting. We're not going over any limits. We're doing great. And then we're going to go into EQ. And that is not the one I want. We're going to go into EQ again, and we're going to use this one. And then I usually just go to the loudness maximizer. I click on 2, I take the L and I kind of boost up my lows, and then I pull over here and I'll boost up my highs a little bit, usually like half of the lows, and then I'll find a spot to dip this here. I'll usually look at the meter. If you are a video marketer, this podcast is for you. Or if you're just trying to hear about some other young talents doing great things in this world, Ashley is a wonderful example of that. So there we go. Here's that. We're here with that. Now we're going to get into the actual podcast. This is a great example for this video because as you can see, I'm pretty quiet. I'm going to solo me here. So we kick off the podcast every week by tell everyone who. And then as you can see, Ashley is much louder.
Ashley Newton, and I am a.
So here's Ashley's, and you can see she's loud enough. So what we're going to do is first apply this, which you can see here. I actually did this in a take before, admittingly, but her lower end's lower and the higher end's a little higher, and that's because it's a woman's voice. The low deepness you want in the voice was with men, and then you want something a little higher, and it's this the EQ of the voice. So you want to make sure you are adjusting based on the person and also based on the sex of the person. But we're gonna add the EQ, give it a little kick. And then we're going to compress after. I think compressing after is actually the best way to do this. You would have seen mine do it first, but I guess I'm a little more used to how I record my voice. But hers and what happened before, sometimes you'll see after you EQ it, it boosts it back up and decompresses it and normalizes it, which you could always normalize and decompress as many times and compress as many times as you want. But unfortunately, the more you compress it, you'll hear sound quality issues and things of that nature. So you want to avoid layering on the compression.
Create their own marketing. They can work with any.
See, now that sounds good. And then we're going to go into noise reduction and
the outside marketing. Their own little video. But because they have a...
we supplied some hiss reduction there, and she had a very high-end kind of hiss on her mic. And a lot of these audio issues, too, we're still in COVID times, so you're seeing kind of editing from a COVID level, not to make it that, but this is, you're not in a studio with perfect audio quality. We're kind of doing what we can right now. So a lot of these issues and a lot of these tweaks and stuff you might not have to deal with if you're doing things a little differently.
They also have access.
So here's mine. I'm obviously a lot quieter than Ashley. So what we can do first and foremost is turn this up a little bit. But also what we're going to do is apply our EQ first. And that's because it's going to raise it up. So as you saw here, what we're going to do is we're going to pull up my low. As a male voice, you want that lower, traditional sound of a male voice to be amplified. You want to pull down the 2 a little bit here, and then you want to push up your highs a little bit. It's kind of the reverse for women. You want to push up the highs a little more. But also when pushing up the highs, you have to be careful because sometimes you can, and same with the lows, you can sometimes stimulate sounds that you're not hearing when recording. Low end bass frequencies or hums, high hisses and whines. So you got to be careful when you're doing this. But in generally speaking, quick and dirty, this works. Let's see what it sounds like. Up with my own marketing, like it's a lot to deal with, and especially if you're cool. So we're gonna add that. Then we are going to raise the volume a little more. We're gonna raise the volume some more, just to where those are peeking around a little bit. And then we are gonna add our compressor. Again, now we're gonna add our compressor. I want to stress that a lot of these tools and the way you're seeing me use them are subjective and may not even be correct. I hate to straight up say that, but I've kind of figured out what works for what I'm doing, especially with the quality of audio I'm getting through COVID. So I would really recommend on a deeper dive of this to take these tools that I'm using and figure out what they mean more in Audition. Because I'm just applying the basic voice leveler compressor, which works, but you might realize something works a little better for you in your current environment and what you're trying to accomplish. Lastly, I'm going to go here and put on the normalizer to -2, and it's going to boost those compressed up to -2 again. So now we're nice and flat and looking good. And then we're going to maybe do a little hiss reduction. Maybe we're going to do a little hiss reduction, I think would be the move. So it's a lot of stuff that, as you can hear, kind of that robot-y version of my sound. That's what we're trying to rip out a little bit, so we're going to apply that there. Actually, I think what I just did was apply the... If you hit the button that I just hit, where you can hear it, it outputs it only, but you want to be able to hear that while you're doing it, but then you want to unclick that, which I just made that mistake, so don't do it. We're exporting, applying, and now traveling, especially so now when you look, as you can see from the beginning of the video, we have much more visibly better levels and all that stuff, and then kind of at the end over here, you can even adjust those more. So we'll do that kind of in our final thing. So now we have this. The next step of the process, which I'm gonna not do on camera just because it's a waste of time, but the next step would be kind of clipping up your podcast. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people, want to restart their thoughts. It's better to kind of, I like my podcast rolling and functioning, but there are some things that you later think about that you're like, I'm going to maybe remove that or clean up that, or if I took that out. So if you want to go in and tighten up your podcast, this is the time to do that. I'm going to, again, not do that here on this video. And what we're going to do to close this whole thing, though, here is the outro to the show. So I'm going to copy that from another job. It could also live here, but I have it in this job. And then we're going to put it in track 6 all the way at the beginning and pull it to the end. Get in the weeds there. And we're going to put it here. and mix it in a little bit. So as you can see, we're going to cross a little bit, make sure we're all out. And that's that. Put it here.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like you work with a great group of people. So Ashley, everyone go check them out. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you for listening to...
I'm actually going to pull this here just so we can control the volume a little bit, but now it's a matter of kind of just mastering, which again, this is going to be pretty quick and lean mastering, but we're going to want to just get everything to about -3.
To this week's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the world of content marketing.
Cool. We're going to expand this. We're going to expand this so we can see the whole thing. Get over here.
Greetings. And welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast, the show that helps marketers.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much the editing process. Now we're going to export. Which to do that, you go up to File, Export, Multi-Track Mixdown. You can do entire selection, time selected, however you want to do it. And then here's your different formats. WAV is obviously the best audio format, but I'm exporting to MP3 just because the software Anchor I'm going to show you guys how to use calls for MP3. They don't take WAV. And then you kind of have all your settings. You can name it, put it where you want, then hit OK when it's done, and it mixes it down for you. So next we're going to move to Anchor, and I'm going to show you guys how to get set up and online with Anchor. All right, so now we are in Anchor. Anchor is a platform that is owned by Spotify. And what Anchor basically allows you to do is create, host, and promote your podcast, not only on Spotify, but across all platforms. The cool thing with Anchor is it essentially propagates your content for free on Apple, Overcast, and all these different podcasting platforms. But first and foremost, you get put on Spotify, and that's where you end up first because it's their company. So the cool thing about Anchor is even if you're watching this video and you don't have Audition or you're a little timid about some of the things I was doing, Anchor does a lot of that for you. Now, you don't have as much control over your audio and things of that nature, but as you can see here, you can actually record. You can message, you can add voice messages, you can do libraries, transition libraries, anything you upload. So you can upload, record, and you can actually, on their app, record via the phone. It limits you to about an hour, but you can actually call in people and have them on your podcast over the phone. You can do different segments on here, record trailers, things like that. But it's really great software, and it's also really, really great if you don't know what you're doing at all. But we have recorded our podcast already, so what we're going to do is go here. We're going to go to the Content Marketing Podcast, and here is our episode. So we're going to upload and just wait for that to happen. Another thing to talk about while we're uploading is, as you can see here, it says add a sponsored segment. What you can do on Anchor is actually monetize your podcast directly from them. So they essentially give you different brands. A lot of times it's Anchor itself to record a 15 to 30 minute plug for, much like you hear on a lot of your favorite podcasts you listen to, and then they will actually reimburse you through Anchor. I believe it's like $15 every 1,000 listens, which isn't a ton of money, but if it's something that you're interested in, you think it fits your brand and your podcast, it could be great. You know, if you blow up and have 100,000 listens, that could be a nice, even $1,000 paycheck for you just for having your content here and ready. But they do let you pick what you put on there, and you have to record it. So it is a great tool that can still fit your brand. It's just not something we're doing here at the Content Marketing Podcast. I'd also like to add another thing that this allows you to do that I've done in the past is if you wanted to record your segments in pieces and organize them. So let's say you don't have the means to edit and do all these things. You can actually record your intro like I did. You can record your outro. any piece, and then have your actual episode in the middle, and you can actually drag and put those things in order on here, and it'll play through. For this podcast, I do everything on my own in Audition, but for other podcasts like All Along the Watchmen, I actually did that in here. All right, now that it is done processing, save episode, and you go into here, and here's pretty straightforward how you edit and do everything. So season 1, episode 4, full episode, clean or explicit, just, if you're swearing or not. And then you can actually schedule your podcast's release. So we actually do a 5 a.m. release because that's what we do around here. And then I'll just fill in the information here and hit schedule episode, and you are done. You can save drafts. You could switch this to HTML, you can add links, and it sends it all over the place. So it's pretty straightforward. I really recommend using Anchor for anyone out there who's a little nervous about podcasting and how to accomplish things and get things done. They have so many great features, and I think it'll be really useful for you guys. So if you have any questions about podcasting, how to create a podcast, please feel free to shoot us an email at thecontentmarketingpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get back to you. Really appreciate you guys, and good luck with your podcasting.